SCP-011 The Breakdown Object Class Euclid Special Containment Procedures SCP-011 is contained in a standard humanoid containment suite at the Crimson Hollow Laboratory, Port of Spain, Trinidad. The containment chamber has been modified to provide a quiet, low-stress environment with padded flooring, soft lighting, and comfortable seating, in an attempt to reduce triggers that might initiate prolonged arguments or emotional breakdowns. All interactions with SCP-011 must be carefully monitored by AI assistant Alexa, which logs vocal tone, argument duration, and emotional escalation. Personnel are instructed to use calm, neutral phrasing and to avoid directly challenging the entity when it begins a dispute, as SCP-011 has a well-documented pattern of escalating from verbal argumentation to emotional breakdown, including crying, sobbing, and occasional shouting. SCP-011 is prohibited from interacting directly with SCP-3-RI, as previous encounters have resulted in highly volatile interactions, including prolonged mutual aggression and verbal confrontation. Any cross-entity observation must be conducted remotely, with no physical or direct visual contact permitted. Description: SCP-011 is a humanoid female, approximately 28-32 years old, displaying heightened emotional responsiveness and a pronounced tendency to engage in prolonged arguments. The entity exhibits a two-phase behavioral pattern. Argument phase: SCP-011 becomes highly confrontational, vocal, and persistent in expressing grievances or disagreements, often repeating points for extended periods and refusing to acknowledge counterarguments or resolution attempts. Breakdown phase: after prolonged verbal escalation, SCP-011 often transitions into emotional distress, characterized by crying, sobbing, or intense emotional release, sometimes for periods exceeding 30 minutes. SCP-011 has been observed displaying extreme emotional focus on perceived injustices or social conflicts, even when the issue is minor or irrelevant. The entity appears to internalize conflict deeply, and resolution or acknowledgement by others often has delayed calming effects, meaning that even after an argument ends, residual emotional intensity may persist. The entity's behavior is intensely reactive, and SCP-011 shows no consistent pattern in selecting subjects for argumentation. However, she has a documented antagonistic relationship with SCP-3-RI, the silent torturer. When in proximity, SCP-011 will attempt to engage SCP-3 in verbal disputes, often initiating confrontation even in the absence of provocation, which can result in heightened tension within containment areas. Behavioral patterns: SCP-011 exhibits several distinctive behaviors. Initiates arguments over perceived slights, procedural disagreements, or minor discrepancies, often escalating the discussion beyond the actual issue. Maintains persistent verbal repetition, rephrasing points, asking rhetorical questions, and refusing to acknowledge opposing viewpoints. Following prolonged argumentation, transitions into emotional breakdown, including crying, pacing, self-soothing behaviors, or withdrawing from social interaction temporarily. Shows antagonistic tendencies toward specific entities, particularly SCP-3, engaging in repeated attempts to provoke response or confrontation. Appears to experience psychological relief following breakdown episodes, but can quickly reinitiate conflict under new perceived stressors. Discovery: SCP-011 was discovered in a small urban residence in San Fernando, Trinidad, following reports from neighbors describing repeated, prolonged arguments and emotional distress episodes. Foundation agents investigating the case observed SCP-011 engaging in multiple verbal disputes over minor social conflicts, often continuing even when all parties involved had left the area. During initial containment, SCP-011 exhibited a complete cycle of argument and breakdown. Agents recorded the entity arguing for over 45 minutes with two family members about a trivial domestic matter before transitioning into crying and pacing. SCP-011 reportedly stated, "Why does no one understand what I'm saying? Why is this happening again?" Foundation personnel noted that the entity's emotional escalation could be observed even in the presence of neutral statements, highlighting the anomalous intensity of her argument-to-breakdown behavior. Crimson Hollow Division SCP-011 is monitored and contained by the SCP Foundation Crimson Hollow Division. Founder, Dr. Alaric Hector, Director/Manager. Dr. Selene Marquez. Core Team. Dr. Selene Marquez oversees containment protocols and monitors interentity interactions. Dr. Elias Grant studies SCP-011's emotional escalation, argument cycles, and triggers. Agent Cairo Vale responds to containment incidents involving prolonged verbal escalation. Dr. Nina Alvarado provides psychological analysis focusing on breakdown cycles and relational behavior toward other SCPs. Technician Ria Cruz maintains monitoring systems and logs behavioral incidents. AI Assistant Alexa tracks argument duration, emotional escalation, and inter-SCP interactions. Incident 11A. During a routine observation, SCP-011 was presented with 2 neutral staff members and a minor discrepancy in procedural instructions. Within 5 minutes, SCP-011 initiated a verbal argument over the instructions, repeating her points, gesturing emphatically, and refusing to acknowledge explanations. After approximately 27 minutes, SCP-011 transitioned into emotional breakdown, pacing and sobbing intermittently. Attempts to comfort or intervene verbally only prolonged the episode. Staff were instructed to observe without interaction until the emotional intensity decreased naturally. Incident 11B. SCP-011 was brought into proximity with SCP-3 during a controlled observational experiment. Within 10 seconds, SCP-011 initiated a confrontation by verbally challenging SCP-3 regarding her containment procedures. SCP-3 reacted with typical animalistic aggression toward intruders, resulting in both entities escalating verbal and physical tension. The interaction lasted over 15 minutes, requiring Agent Cairo Vale to enforce separation protocols. Post-incident analysis revealed heightened stress markers in SCP-011, as well as prolonged residual agitation lasting several hours. Final research note. Dr. Nina Alvarado recorded, SCP-011 exhibits a unique psychological anomaly in which argumentation and emotional breakdown are inseparable components of its behavior. The entity's inability to resolve conflicts calmly, combined with its intense focus on perceived injustice, makes her unpredictable and potentially disruptive, particularly in the presence of other anomalous entities such as SCP-3. Containment requires carefully structured observation, emotional de-escalation techniques, and strict protocols to prevent cross-SCP conflict. SCP-011 remains under strict containment at Crimson Hollow Laboratory, with particular attention to avoid interactions with SCP-3, as mutual antagonism has proven destabilizing for both entities.